There was once a famous Anglican clergyman by the name of William Ralph Inge. Prominent in his church, he became Dean of St. Paul's Cathedral in London. For a long time, Dean Inge was a regular contributor to the Evening Standard. The words of prophets always tend to upset and unsettle people. Once Dean Inge wrote something in his column that enraged one of his readers, and she wrote him a letter saying, "Every night I pray for your death, and it may interest you to know that in 2 other cases I have had great success." Dean Inge was quite amused. But he died at the ripe old age of 94. I suppose the old woman thought that her prayers had been answered. We sometimes have peculiar notions about prayer. Often we regard God as a puppet in our hands, manipulated by us to do exactly what we want. After all, don't we always know what's best for us? Or perhaps we see God as a vending machine into which we insert a coin and the candy bar magically comes out. Just maybe, though, it is the puppet which transforms the puppeteer when the 2 of them touch, and not the other way around. Just maybe what comes out of that divine vending machine is sometimes not the sweet but ultimately harmful piece of candy, but rather something a bit less appetizing, but infinitely more nutritious. It is the touch itself, the connection, the sharing between the human and the divine that is the real essence of prayer, and not our peculiar notion, our very narrow and foolish notion of what we hope to get out of it. The Danish theologian Søren Kierkegaard once wrote, "The function of prayer is not to influence God, but rather to change the nature of the one who prays." We see a great lesson in the awesome power of that touch between the human and the divine, the awesome power of prayer, in the rather amusing story of the old lady and the judge. A persistent old lady pesters the poor judge until he finally gives in, afraid that she is going to beat him up. The woman did not become discouraged when her prayers did not immediately produce that magical result that she had been hoping for. She kept on praying. She kept on touching. And through the awesome power of that touch, through that encounter between the human and the divine, something happened to transform her. That same Dean Inge, for whose death that other old lady had ardently prayed, once said, "Prayer gives a man the opportunity of getting to know a gentleman he hardly ever meets. I do not mean his maker, but himself." In prayer, we come to know ourselves. In prayer, we come to know our unrealized potential. In prayer, we feel that amazing touch between the human and the divine. In the mid-1930s, there was a world-class pistol shooter in Hungary by the name of Károly Takács. Takács was a member of the Hungarian army. His dream was to go to the Olympics and compete in pistol shooting. He was disqualified from the 1936 Berlin Olympics because of some rule in Hungary at that time that only commissioned officers could participate, and he was only a sergeant. But he didn't give up. He kept on training. After the 36 Olympics, that rule was dropped. He trained, and he dreamed of Olympic glory. By 1938, he was recognized as the greatest shooter in the world, and he had high hopes of making the Tokyo Olympics of 1940. One day, Tokach was training with his army squad, and a hand grenade exploded in his hand, blowing away his pistol-shooting right hand. During the month he spent then in the hospital, he mourned the loss of his right hand as well as his Olympic dream, for both had seemingly been shattered. But then he went deep into himself and allowed the human to touch the divine. That was a moment of prayer. He allowed his eyes to wander from where his right hand should have been over to the other side, where he noticed his left hand. He got up, dusted himself off, and began training to shoot with his left hand. In the spring of 1939, he attended the National Hungarian Pistol Shooting Championship, and the competitors were amazed to see him there. Some of them went up to him, gave him their sympathy, and expressed admiration that he had come to watch them compete. They were more surprised when he said, "I have not come to watch. I have come to compete." They were more surprised still when he won. He dreamed of going to the 1940 Olympics, but because of World War II, the Olympics were canceled, and so was his dream. But he did not give up even then. He allowed that divine inside of him to continue to touch the human inside of him. He continued to train. The 1944 Olympics were also canceled for the same reason. The war was still going on. But finally, in 1948, at the ripe old age for an athlete of 38, Károly Tokach qualified for the Olympics in London and won the gold medal, setting a new world record for pistol shooting. And he did it with his now world-class left hand. He kept on training, and 4 years later, in 1952, he entered the Helsinki Olympics and won another gold medal. Most people, having lost the treasure of their world-class right hand, would have despaired. Not this man, for he was able to go down deep into himself and come to know a new part of himself. He was able to touch the human to the divine. This is prayer. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, former chief rabbi of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth, once said, "Part of the beauty of Judaism, and surely this is so for other faiths also, is that it gently restores control over time. 3 times a day we stop what we are doing and turn to God in prayer. We recover perspective. We inhale a deep breath of eternity." Prayer is not changing the heart of God. Prayer is finding the heart of God inside your own. It is then that you come to know your own heart, that you come to see something of your own hidden potential that you did not see before. It is then that you stop crying over the loss of your right hand and notice for the first time the even greater untapped power in your left. It is then that infinite possibilities are rolled out before you, and you see from the perspective of the eternal, the limitless, the divine. Inhale that deep breath of eternity and breathe that eternity out into your world. Then you have prayed.